So hello guys, I am your host Bison. So this game starts with d4 and c5. The old Benoni defense. This game was played in 11th March in the title Tuesday held in year 2025. Here White continued the game with d5, not exchanging and just pushing forward, and then comes knight to f6, taking the space as well as defending the pawn. This is called Benoni Indian defense. Here White defends it with the move c4 and then Carlsen played e6, applying pressure towards the white pawn chain. And then White develops his knight on c3, eyeing the d5 pawn. Then after this he captured on d5 and White recaptured it, and then Carlsen played d6, solidifying the structure, and then White played e4, and after this g6. Carlsen is preparing to flank to his bishop on g7, then White develops his another knight to f3, and after this a6, covering the b5 square so that no one can enter into this. And here White expand towards the queen side by playing a4. Okay, after this bishop to g4 by Carlsen, pinning the knight, and White simply unpins it by the bishop to e2. After this, Black captured on f3, and after bishop takes f3, you can see that everything was fine. Yeah, so Black brings his knight on d7, and the next move might be knight to e5, which hits the bishop. And after this, White castled, and then comes bishop to g7, as I mentioned earlier. Here, but Carlsen is also preparing to castle. Then comes bishop to f4, hitting the d6 pawn, and Carlsen defends it from the queen. Yeah. Then White brings his rook on e1, threatening to play e5, which attacks towards the black pawn chain. But after this, Carlsen simply castled short side, and then White brings his queen on b3, hitting the b7 pawn. But to defend it, just simply rook to b8 by Carlsen. But after this, White made a mistake by playing a5. Since White was guarding the b5 square earlier, but after a5, the b5 square is no longer protected. Hence, this gives the black a chance to play b5 in the future. And after this, Carlsen placed his knight on e8. He wants to reroute it on the c7 square. Then comes bishop to e2, stopping the move b5. But after this, Carlsen placed his knight on c7 as according to his plan, and clearly the next move will be b5. Okay, bishop to f1 by White, guarding the e4 pawn from the rook. Yeah, then comes b5, and here White n%, and after rook takes b6, you can see that Carlsen activated his rook, which is hitting the queen. Then he defends his queen on c2 square, and after this Carlsen doubled his rook, attacking the b2 pawn, and White defends it by the rook to b1. And now here's the thing, it actually better for White to defend this position by playing rook to a2. Why? Well, let's think ahead. If the a6 pawn get exchanged in the future, Black won't be able to place their rook on the a file. Why? Because the a file is already be covered by the white rook. It's a simple but effective way to neutralize the black potential counterplay and maintain control. Then comes rook to b4 by Carlsen, creating pressure on the e4 pawn, but h3 by White, opening the space for the king so that it can move on h2 square further. And now in this position, Carlsen strikes towards the king side by h5. Okay, then comes b3, and after this knight to b5, asking for knight exchange. Then knights are exchanged, and you can see that White has strong connected pawns on the queen side. But after this, then comes bishop to d2, attacking the rook, and the only square for the rook is which is rook to d4. After this, bishop to c3, and then now you can see that the rook is trapped. But here Carlsen finds a beautiful move, which is b4, attacking the bishop, and white simply captured the rook. But after this simply bishop captures on d4, and you can see that black can cause some serious troubles towards the white king, like queen can move on f6 square, and then knight will jump on e5, which joins the party. Here white brings his another rook into the d1 square, and after this queen to f6 by Carlsen, hitting the f2 square, and after this bishop to c4, opening the f1 square for the rook, and after this then comes h4, and clearly the next move will be g5, and you can see that black is doing well. Okay, but here rook to f1 by white, defending the f2 square. Then Carlsen brings his knight forward towards the e5 square, but this is a mistake because the queen is guarding the bishop on d4, but the knight is blocking the e5 square. And now here white can play this beautiful move, which is rook takes d4, sacrificing the rook, because after pawn takes the rook, you can see that black pawn structure is now shattered. And but after knight to e5, he missed this move and he placed his king on h1, which invites Carlsen to bring his queen forward towards the f4 square, which stops the move f4, which kicks the knight. Yeah, so queen to d2, asking for queen exchange, but he simply grabbed the e4 pawn, and after this bishop to d3, a good move, attacking the queen, but Carlsen simply exchanged it with his knight. And now Carlsen grabs the another pawn, and after this f4, covering the g5 and e5 square, which is good. But here's the catch, there are even better move in this position. Instead of this, white should brought his rook on the e file so that black can't enter his rook into the e file. Yeah, so queen to f5 by Carlsen, asking for queen exchange, but here Carlsen must consider the move rook to e8 and then reroute it into the e3 square, which can cause serious issue towards the white. Yeah, queen to e2, stopping the move rook to e8. Then comes king to g7. After this, queen to e1 by white, attacking the h4 pawn. Carlsen defends it by queen to f6. And then white brings his rook towards the f3 square. Maybe he wants to double his rook later. After this, rook to a8. Clearly the next destination will be a2 square. Yeah, so f5 by white, asking for pawn exchange, but Carlsen simply declined and pushed his pawn further, and then queen to e4, attacking the rook, but black placed his rook on the a7 square, stopping the move queen b7. Yeah, so white brings back his rook, but I can't understand this. Yeah, then Carlsen brings his rook into the e7 square, attacking the queen. Then queen moves on g4 square, and after this black brings his rook forward into the e3 square, attacking the pawn. White defends it by placing his rook towards the f3 square, asking for rook exchange, but rook goes back on e5. After this, he again goes back on f1 square. Then comes d5, and you can see that black has a solid pawn structure. But here, white brings his rook on the f3 square again, which is a mistake because now Carlsen played rook to e4, attacking the queen. And the only move left for queen is to move on h5 square. And now Carlsen finds a beautiful breakthrough by playing c4. It is because after b takes c4 and d takes c4, you can see that black has two passers on the queen side. After this, rook at f goes to f1. Then comes b3, and you know that how good is Carlsen at the end game. Here, white tries to exchange the rook, but Carlsen simply exchanged it, and he grabs the f5 pawn. And after this, queen to e2, attacking the c4 pawn, but simply it is of no use because queen to d3, asking for queen exchange. But he declined and he played queen to g4, attacking the g5 pawn, but Carlsen simply defends it by bishop to f6. And after the queen to c8, the final move played by Carlsen is b2 and white resigned. What an amazing game by the god of endgame, Magnus Carlsen. You can know how good is Magnus' skills in his endgame. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked this video. Hit that subscribe button for more. I am your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.